Welcome back, everybody. Today we'll be working on that fantasy locomotive, the one I built, the C1-A duplex 4444. It's a fantasy locomotive, never really existed. I seen a picture of it on online on I think Richard Leonard's uh, website. He's got a bunch of locomotives. Got some fantasy steam locomotives. Um, I seen a picture of it on there that he created it, and I thought it'd be a cool one to kind of try to build. So years ago, I built it, and I used a Bowser T1 chassis and a Bowser T1 tender, and then the locomotive shell I just used River Rossi Hutchins shell and extended it. So it really wasn't that hard to build, but it needs a good cleaning because it isn't really running very well right now. So we'll take it over to the bench, take it apart, show you guys what it looks like on the inside, and show you kind of how I built it, and probably give a good cleaning. I'll probably add those wires in between the locomotive and tender too, maybe, I don't know. But we'll take it over to the bench and take it apart and take a look at it. All right, we got it on the bench here, and pretty much goes together like an old River Rossi would. I got the tender wired to this drawbar here, which I got an old screw here. Does connection through that screw to the frame for the electrical pickup from the tender. So like I said, I may just add a wire to inside that tender and then to the locomotive, kind of help with that pickup on there, which I built this years ago, so I didn't have those wires then and stuff. So, but pretty simple locomotive. The only thing that holds that shell on there is just like a regular T1. It's these two screws up here in the top. So take those out and take a look at it. So, and then I had to reinforce the shell with a piece of brass so it would hold those drives in there, because the original T1 shell is a die-cast shell, so it's real heavy, real strong, and the River Rossi shell is plastic, so I couldn't rely on the plastic to be the support to hold those drivers in place. So I had to add a piece of brass in there, nice thick piece of brass to give it strength. And I believe this has an LED light into it too, if I remember right. It's got some long screws. And I think there's some spacers in there too, if I remember right. So, yep, nice long screw. There we go. And then there's the wire. It goes to that piece there. That drawbar connects to that. And I got a weight added in there to give it a little extra weight. And then you can see this right here. It runs all the way up to here. It's a solid piece of brass. It's a pretty thick piece of brass. So that gives support for these two trucks to mount there. There's the one screw. There's the other screw right there. And a screw right down onto there. So it stiffens that shell up to help hold all that together. If I didn't have it in there, it was just plastic, then it'd probably twist and wouldn't be very strong. So you can see it's just it's a dual drive set, single motor dual drive. So I'm gonna take this all apart and give it a really good cleaning, and also probably need to check and see to make sure that these gears aren't rubbing that brass plate there like they were on that one locomotive. So basically all I gotta do is probably just unsolder this wire here, because I don't want to get in taking that screw off. Unsolder that wire there, and because I'm probably gonna run a plug between the locomotive and the tender. That way, I mean, it's just a homemade style pin, and it kind of works, but sometimes it really doesn't make good contact. So I want to put that wire in there. That way I know it's getting good contact. And like I said, I built this years ago. back when, I don't know what to say, I was not experienced as I am now. This was the second really kit bashed or built locomotive I ever did. And I mean, it turned out pretty good. But like I said, these don't run that good. These T1 drives, I don't think. But we're going to take it apart and just see if we can get it to run really good. And make sure gears ain't rubbing, and make sure it's oiled and clean and all that. So let me get this apart. And they're pretty simple to do, like they were in that one video. I'll just pull the drive shaft off, and then work on the front part truck here. Get the wheels all clean and oiled and greased, and check that gear in there. And then we'll move to the rear one and do that and clean all the wheels. And then we'll do the tender last. I even added a coal load to this tender. So that's pretty heavy tender. I think the tender is heavier than the locomotive. Well, it's probably about the same as the locomotive. It's pretty heavy. So let me get this disassembled and I'll be back. All right, I've got these trucks all cleaned and back together and everything. I got rid of that rubber drive shaft. I made it used an Athearn drive shaft out of a I don't know what, some GP35. I don't know what kind of an Athearn locomotive I had sitting there. I was missing a bunch of parts, so I robbed the drive shaft out of it. It was the correct length, so it was the only drive shaft I could find out of my stash that would work. All the other ones are kind of too long and stuff, and so this one was about perfect. And to measure for my drive shaft, all I did was took my little ruler here, which has, I use the HO scale side a lot, and I just measured distance between these two bolts here, which came out to about 21 HO scale feet, and then lined them up on here and got it to where it was about 21 HO scale feet apart. And then I just measured about how much of a drive shaft I would need, and then I went over there and I found one. And the Athearn ones have the bigger hole inside, so I didn't have to re-drill them or nothing. They pretty much just fit right on there, and I put a little touch of glue on there. So you take this back apart and let it dry real good before those get, sometimes that glue squishes out, and you know, if you leave it together, it'll glue it all together, and I don't want to do that. So I'll let it dry overnight. So, but I took these apart. The front one here, we had to check to make sure there was good clearance for that gear, because as you see, it moves back and forth a little bit. And originally, before I filed that out, it was rubbing, which could cause some damage to the gear or slow the locomotive down, or you know, it caused damage to that gear, and we don't need to do that. So now there's plenty of clearance. It moves back and forth, ain't rubbing nowhere. And I had to check the bottom plate along with the top plate and this mount here for the shaft that holds the gear there. So made sure none of that was rubbing. And then to take this apart, you got these two screws here and the front truck. Front truck screw is flathead, and it's got a little nut on top, so you can pull the pistons out off in the front truck. And I had to put a piece of styrene in between the pistons and the frame here, just so this front truck wouldn't cause a short, because I'm not sure which side does the pickup on this, and I figured I'd just put a piece of styrene in there and just not even worry about it. So that's what I did. So hopefully it won't have any shorts. And then that screw there screws into the top plate, so it doesn't have a nut. Then the next screw back goes all the way through both plates and screws into this little bracket right here, which helps hold the shaft with the gear and also mounts the body too. And that's all there is to that, really. And then I added LED to it. And I just used one of those strips out of the top of an Athearn locomotive, flattened it out, drilled a hole in it. And then there's an extra hole in the chassis there for some reason, I'm not sure why. But I used that hole with a nut and a screw to hold that down and bent it to where it needed to be about in the right location for the headlight of the locomotive. And then ran the underwire back. It goes to the motor, solders back onto the motor. So like I said, we got the Athearn drive in here, or drive shaft. So hopefully that'll work good. And then the rear one, we did the same thing. Took it apart, checked that gear, make sure it wasn't rubbing. This one doesn't move very much, but I checked it anyway. Did a little filing on it, made sure I had plenty of clearance. So the front screw on this goes through, nut there just like the front one, takes the pistons off. The screw there in the center actually mounts to the bottom of the motor. It goes all the way through and mounts to the bottom of the motor. And you have to watch with these. If you don't have any shims in there, well, I don't know, some of them may be different, but this one, the shim I originally had in there was too big, so it was not really making good gear contact and kind of slipping a little bit. It looked like to me. So I tried it without a shim, and it's too tight. It wouldn't even turn. So I ended up shimming it with these little plastic washers I have. I found these a few years ago. They are little, and I use them all the time on stuff. Put it here so you can see it. I don't even know, you could probably buy them at a hardware store or something. It's little plastic washers. I use them as insulators, or whatever. I had a whole bag of them, probably about 1,000 of them in that bag. But I used 2 of these. Got me the correct thickness I needed for that motor and gear. So now it doesn't slip and it turns free and everything. So, and I got the motor all cleaned up and took the brushes out and cleaned and oiled everything, and it's running pretty good, I think, now. So, and then you got the third screw back here, which just goes into, just holds those 2 plates together. And then screw for the rear trailing truck. And it just screws right in there. And to get the motor off, like I said, you got this middle screw that has the shims under it. And then, kind of hard to see there, but right there is a flathead screw that screws into this mount of the motor. And that also holds the motor on there too. So we got a little bit of grease in there, got it working around. So this should all work there. So the only thing next to do is got these little 2 wire plugs. I ordered me another batch of those. So I think I'm going to install one on this, because originally I had it to where it just had the wire going to this little drawbar that I made for it, and it picks up on that little pin back here. Actually, that's just a screw I used, and it did work, but it's not the greatest. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that the way it is, but I'm also going to add that wire so it'll get constant current going through there. I don't have to worry about it maybe not getting current sometimes. And it's already got a hole in the tender, so I can just take the tender apart and run it through there. And these T1 tenders from Bowser T1s, and I think the pin lines are about the same too, the older ones. Just 4 screws, missing one there, but there's a screw there, and then you got 2 little ones up front too. And that pulls the shell right off. So we get right in there and attach those wires somewhere. I'm not sure if I'm going to solder them in or screw them in or what. So when we get in there, I'll be able to see what we're going to do. But and on this shell, what I did to make this shell fit this locomotive, I had to cut it in half and lengthen it. So took a thick piece of brass, flat brass, and cut it and got it lengthened to where I wanted it, and then glued that piece of brass in there to hold it in place. And once that dried good, then I added styrene to the sides to fill in the holes, and body filler to get it all nice and smooth. and then I think I added 1 or 2 ribs to it. Can't even tell. They look like the original rib. Oh, there's one there, and that one. But that's original one, I think. And those are the original ones, so they look exactly the same as the original ones. And that's just made out of that cardstock. Just glue it on. And it's thin enough to where it looks like original. So, and then I had that weight in there because I thought maybe it needed some weight. And I had to make side skirts for it. I just cut some out of styrene. So I don't know how thick it was. About the same thickness as original skirts on these Hudson's shells. And just made it go all the way down to the front. Cut it. And I don't know if you can see in the video here, but kind of got like tried to make it look like it had rivets in it. And spots on both sides. So I tried to decal rivets and I didn't find they worked very good because once you paint it and all that, they kind of can't see them. So what I tried on this one, you can see the back side there where it got punched. I used one of those little wheels. I forget what they're called, but they got all the little things on it. And you roll it across there and it punches it. And it worked pretty good. I think you can kind of see them. So, but now we just gotta wait for this glue to dry. So I'm gonna let it sit overnight and maybe go to the river or something. I don't know. And then tomorrow, finish putting this back together. Like I said, I might put these wires in and put it all back together, and hopefully it'll run, and hopefully it'll run better than it did. So we'll get this all done, and then I'll be back. Oh, hey. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all enjoy this video. I'm still down here on the river catching catfish. All right, everybody, I got the locomotive back together. I had to move this mounting screw up here in the front truck forward just a little bit. So I had to drill out another hole and just move it forward just a little bit. For some reason it wasn't lining up right. I don't know. I measured it a bunch of times, but I don't know. For some reason it was off a little bit, but easy fix. Just drill out another hole where it needed to be and mount in there. No big deal. I got extra hole in the shell now. I need to fill that in one of these days. And it's pretty level right now. And the front truck, when it swivels, it's got these little brackets here on top of these pistons or whatever right here. I'm going to shave some of those off, I think. They're kind of hitting sometimes. And especially if it's like, you know, it'll hit if it's moving around a little bit. So I'm going to have to take my Dremel, take care of those. And the front truck, I don't know what the deal is, but it's hitting the front wheels a little bit. So I flipped it around the other direction, still does it. It's mounted there like it was. It probably always has. I just never noticed it. Like I said, I built this years ago. So, you know, and I haven't ran it that much since then. A couple times. So it's got the Bowser T1 chassis in it. These front wheels, they just need to just a hair forward more. But I think I can just take a little bit off right here and off these edges and they won't hit no more. So I'm going to try to do that. And then I got the tender all disassembled, which was pretty simple. It's just those 4 screws like I showed you earlier. 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Comes right out. It's aluminum. It's made out of aluminum. So it's kind of light. I had to add a weight to it. So I had it in there originally, but I just had it hot glued and it came loose. So I used some of that epoxy, glued it back in there really good. So once this stuff dries, it shouldn't come loose no more. And this pretty much operates like a River Aussie kind of tender does. Get the wheels, pick up right there. And then screws, you know, I got the wire hooked to the screws, and then originally ran to that draw bore right there. So I try to set up like a River Aussie style. But I added this wire in there, one of these little two wire plugs. And I already got the wire in the locomotive now. But I just spliced the wire and connected it in between these two here and soldered it in, and then covered the connection up with that electrical tape, liquid stuff. Works real good, dries real fast. So, and then I'll just push it up in there and have it hang out a little bit. And then just plug it to that. So it'll do a lot better pickup, hopefully, than the original style was. So once this dries, I'll put it back together. Pretty simple to do. We'll go ahead and clean up the wheels and the connections and all that here. So it should be pretty easy. And then, yeah, that weight makes that tender a little heavier, which is nice. So the only things left to do, I got to replace the handrail on this thing, because that original handrail I used years ago is just, it bends real easy. I don't like it. So I'm going to get some brass rod and just rebend the new ones for each side real quick. Be pretty simple. And then take it over and see how it'll run. But I don't think it's going to run that great, just because I don't have faith in these T1 chassis. These old ones. Seems like every time I work on one, I can do everything I can think of doing, clean the crap out of the oil and do some improvements. They still don't perform that good. But it should run better than it did. Before it just run, and I don't think I ever tried to pull any cars with it. So I might try to pull cars with this one, I'm not sure. So let me get this stuff done, and then we'll have to take it over to the track and see what it'll do. Alright, I got this thing, I think, finished now. So we can go over and test run it, see if it runs any better than it used to run. I got the railing on both sides. Put a new railing on the back here. Made out of brass, so it's a lot better than that other stuff I had on there originally. So, and let's see the back there. So, I got those pieces ground off there above the piston so they don't rub anymore. And front pilot was having problems of it rubbing the wheels. Well, come to find out that somebody on that original chassis had probably put the wrong front pilot on there. This one's bigger than that one, and that was off of another T1 chassis that I had. So this one's a lot bigger and it rubs, and it was causing it not to sit on the tracks proper either, because these rods right here, or these pistons here, were sitting on top of this truck, wasn't allowing it to sit all the way down. So that truck I found is a little bit smaller wheels, and it sits in there a lot better. So that should take care of that problem. So got it all back together. Hopefully everything fixed on it, because I don't know how good it's going to run, but we're going to see. And then the tender's all back together, everything cleaned. Got the wire put in there. Got it run through that little hole there. So now we'll just take it over to the track and see how it does. But it's running. Alright, I got some box cars on this locomotive. I think 4. So It has a Katy coupler on it. So these are just a couple I had laying up here. Hook them up, run around a couple times. Like I said, I put a Katy coupler on the tender. So I think all my New York Central passenger cars, most of them still have hook horn. I could dig some out probably that have the Katys on them, but they're all in nice cases and stuff. So we're just going to do some box cars for now. So we'll see how it does. It might be a good speed right there, maybe. Coming across the suspension bridge. It runs a little loud. It's not very quiet. It'll go a little faster, but slow speed, really not much slower than that. It's got an LED headlight in it. I don't know if you can see it or not. But this thing's actually running a little better than it used to. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video on the fantasy locomotive that I built. It's called a C1-A duplex. If you go on the web and look for Richard Leonard's website, you'll see that he has a bunch of different steam locomotives, and he's created some like fantasy style locomotives, and they're pretty cool. He's got a bunch of different ones on there, fantasy locomotives that he did. That's pretty cool. I think he did like a Tennessean with a duplex drive like this under it, and it's kind of cool. I thought about building that one, but I was like, nah, I like this one. This one looked really cool, so I was like, that's the one we'll build. Just to see what it'll look like when I get it done. And it turned out nice looking. Performance, nothing. They don't run that great. It gets around the track. That's about it. Probably wouldn't pull a whole lot. Slow speed really ain't got much. Really doesn't really go that real fast either. You're going around the layout. That's about the. It'll go a little bit faster than it was. It's kind of loud running, so, but I can't get that T1 chassis to run much better than it is now, I don't think. And I did a lot of work to it. I just don't have the luck with these T1 chassis, these old Bowser ones, to run good. I'm sure there's some out there that do, but the ones I got, I've been through so many hands and tinkered with, and I don't know. If I could get one still in the box, nobody's touched, maybe I could get it to run good. Well, I don't know. But I think eventually maybe I'll develop another drive system for this out of River Rossi parts or something. But I don't know. I never, like I said, I never built it to run around the layout a lot. I just build it for show. It sits in the case with some of the other trains, and every once in a while I'll pull it out. But it turned out really nice, I think. You know, Bowser T1 chassis, River Rossi Hudson shell stretched to fit on there, and the T1 tender. So, like I said, I think it looks really good, but it doesn't perform very well. So, but I hope everybody enjoyed this video on this, and it kind of showed you on how I maybe build it. And it's pretty simple to build. Like I said, I built this like 5 years ago or something like that. It was one of the early ones I built when I first got into building my own locomotives. So, but I hope you all enjoyed it. And thanks for watching.